Madam Speaker, that if the National Assembly attempts or does enact the Appropriation Act because a division of Revenue Act, the resulting act will be unconstitutional. This is the question that we have often raised repeatedly. Appropriation must be based on the national government share of equitable revenue contained in the Division of Revenue Act. Appropriation at both levels of government must be based on the vertical allocation of equitable share of revenue between the two levels of government and the horizontal allocation amongst the counties. The Supreme Court has affirmed that this is the role that the Senate must guard and protect zealously. Madam Speaker, at this point, let me reiterate that this House is directly elected by the people and represents the sovereignty of the people pursuant to Article 1 of the Constitution. Madam Speaker, the Constitution and the Supreme Court have affirmed the crucial role that this House plays in the constitutional dispensation that the people of this country overwhelmingly voted for. Madam Speaker, this distinguished House manifests the diversity of the nation, represents the will of the people, and exercises their sovereignty as stipulated in Article 94(1) of the Constitution, which provides, and I quote, "The legislative authority of the Republic is derived from the people and at the national level is vested and exercised by Parliament," which reads National Assembly and the Senate. Madam Speaker, in the past, there have been proponents of the view that advisory opinions from the Supreme Court are not binding, and therefore, there have been parties that have sought to disregard the advisory opinion from the Supreme Court. Madam Speaker, the Supreme Court has now categorically and unequivocally held that the judgment in the advisory opinion is binding on all persons and has the same binding effect as a judgment in rem of the Supreme Court. Madam Speaker, the Supreme Court has said that interpretation of the Constitution from the Supreme Court are important cog in the implementation and enforcement of the Constitution, and that the drafters of the Constitution gave the Supreme Court this important role by including the Supreme Court's jurisdiction to render an advisory opinion in line with Article 163(6) of the Constitution. Madam Speaker, therefore, the decision of the Supreme Court and its pronouncement is binding not only on the Senate, but also on the National Assembly. Finally, Madam Speaker and honorable senators, we must never cease to defend our role as House of Parliament and to protect the county governments. The challenges continue, and we have other legal proceedings in which this House seeks to defend its constitutional mandate. Madam Speaker, I call upon all of us to keep up the fight, appear in court when called upon, and for my learned colleagues in the legal profession, please continue representing the Senate in the ongoing proceedings on pro bono basis and when called upon, and ultimately we shall prevail. Madam Speaker, may God bless Kenya and the Senate. I thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Orengo.
Mr. Speaker, let me thank Senior Counsel Senator Kongo Mugeni. I want to thank him for doing such a sterling job and representing the Senate so effectively. I think Senator Omugeni has got vast experience in public law and in litigations generally. And as I congratulate Senator Omugeni, I want to also congratulate all the senators that when this case came about, all the senators who are available on the date it was mentioned for the first time, we all walked to the Supreme Court. I remember Senator Malala was there in a very flowery suit together with the governors. And I think that made an impression that the Senate is prepared to respect other institutions created or established by the Constitution. I also want to appreciate the lawyers in the Senate, because I think when the case was mentioned for the first time, nearly all the lawyers in this august house put themselves on record. But I congratulate Senator Omugeni more particularly because on the day when this matter was scheduled for hearing in the Supreme Court, we had the other case which is before the High Court, and most of the lawyers went to the High Court. Senator Okongo Mugeni, and I think he was not quite well prepared to go and argue the case, but after some consultations, he agreed to go, and what a wonderful job that you did, because I think the arguments that you made carried the day. So we are very proud of one of our own for having persuaded the Supreme Court. And I want to persuade the Senate again, because we had this argument at one time when senators were feeling that courts cannot injunct Parliament. But I still believe that under a constitutional democracy, where we are all required as individuals and as institutions to comply with the rule of law. And in a constitutional democracy, no institution or no person is above the law. And it is only the court that can make a determination when there is a dispute. Just imagine if we enacted the law, including the Constitution, because the Senate and the National Assembly can amend certain provisions of the Constitution. If you amended the law and the matter went before the court, and the court decided that they cannot comply with legislation as enacted by Parliament, that will undermine the rule of law, which is one of the values and principles of governance found in Article 10 of the Constitution. So I think next time around, let us not blow hot and cold, that we can choose to disobey court orders and at an appropriate time says, oh, what a wonderful job a court has done. Because, Senator Mugeni, I think you would agree with me that this decision of the Supreme Court settles most of the questions of the case now we have pending before the High Court. And the chairman of the Justice and Legal Affairs Committee is here. He knows the issues that we have raised in many of the legislation which have been passed in the National Assembly without the participation of the Senate. I am glad the Supreme Court has recognized the role of the Senate and set a mechanism, if we don't put that law in place, for resolving questions that may not be resolved through mediation. So, Madam Speaker, I would lastly want to say that in the first advisory opinion in which the Senate again instituted proceedings against the National Assembly, the Supreme Court was clear and said an advisory opinion is an opinion that is binding. You cannot choose to ignore an advisory opinion. On this matter, the Supreme Court has repeated that decision, reiterated that decision, and I hope the National Assembly will be listening because they were parties to this matter. And if they knew what was coming, this is the time for them to come to us and agree to resolve amicably the matters that are pending before the High Court, which are to do with legislation which have been passed without coming to the Senate. Madam Speaker, although I will say that was my final word, but DORA is the foundation of devolution. Without a division of revenue mechanism where revenue is shared between the two levels of government, if that question is not resolved, then devolution is dead. And therefore, what the Supreme Court was saying in effect is that if this mechanism for sharing revenue equitably cannot work, plus the other reasons that they give, if cannot be achieved, then any Kenyan, or any person for that matter, can go before the Supreme Court for the dissolution of Parliament, because it will mean that Parliament is killing the very system of government that is established under the Constitution. I think it's a day that if we were not having the curfew, we would have a bottle of champagne, particularly for Senator Omugeni, but we will have it one day. What a wonderful job you have done. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Gerard Kay.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for this opportunity. I want to thank Senator Okongo Mugeni, because I was in the Supreme Court when he made very serious and elaborate and constitutional submissions against a team of National Assembly and advocates from the Director of Compliance. And I think, Madam Speaker, two things. One is that I think this issue, because we have before the High Court over 22 legislations that we have taken for issues of constitutionality because of assenting without the input of the Senate, and that matter is pending to go. I want to confirm to colleagues that this is a win to the Senate, for the Senate. Madam Speaker, having looked at this decision that has been made by Supreme Court, is that there can never be appropriation without division of revenue. And it has formed basis in terms of appropriation process for the money in this, by both Parliament. Madam Speaker, I want to thank the Supreme Court, because despite even intimidations of even facing budget cuts because of certain interest within an aspect of almost blackmailing them, they went ahead and stood with the Constitution. Madam Speaker, about the guidance of your office and the office of the Speaker of the National Assembly, the Supreme Court has given opportunity to both houses to come up with a structure on how to resolve some of these impasse, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, it's very important, and where I sit as a Committee of Legal, we are more than willing to come up with necessary legislative intervention so that in concurrence with your office and the office of the Speaker of the National Assembly, we can put this matter to rest. And Madam Speaker, I want to thank the Supreme Court also for warning us that in case we fail or there is an overstretching impasse between the passage of this division of revenue, or when we fail, mediation fail, or there is a total threat to shutdown of counties because of delayed disbursement of money, or money has not been appropriated, then the Parliament can easily be dissolved. And I think my learned senior has alluded to even other jurisdictions where this has happened before. Madam Speaker, we should take this seriously, because the Supreme Court has gone to an extent of telling us that if we do not organize ourselves, it means it can be easily dissolved. Madam Speaker, I think in the advisory opinion, finally, so that I know this issue has eluded a lot of interest from our members, is on the advisory opinion. You know, Madam Speaker, when we were moving to court, I remember even I met with other governors, and they were worried when they were filing their matter in Supreme Court, and they were saying, some people were saying, just advisory opinion is not binding. The decision that was made by Supreme Court on division of revenue in 2013, you don't have to take it to the bank because it's not binding. I am happy that the Supreme Court has come crystal clear that the advisory opinion of the Supreme Court is as good as the judgment, and therefore it binds everybody. And therefore I want to say that, and this has put to rest, and I want to call upon our colleagues in the National Assembly. This perception that we have supremacy battles over our roles has been put to rest by this decision of the Supreme Court. Because where the catch is, Madam Speaker, was on the basis of division of revenue, was on the basis of appropriation and allocation of funds to the counties. I think to this end, the National Assembly should be advised that they have heard before there is a way we can rectify them and we can agree to work together. And I want to thank the senators. They came out strongly, Madam Speaker, when this matter went to Supreme Court and even our matter. And I want to tell them, I want to encourage my colleagues, especially those on the legal team and even from your office, the support from your office, that the journey is not yet over. We still need both legal, moral, and prayer, so that even the 22 legislations that is before the High Court, Madam Speaker, can be quickly resolved. Because we are not doing this to fight anybody or to challenge anybody's authority, Madam Speaker, but we want the fidelity of the rule of law. We want to protect constitutionalism, Madam Speaker, and to ensure that even in posterity, people can look at the time when we were the senators, at this time in the history, that we did the right thing by defending the Constitution. And that is an obligation, Madam Speaker, that everybody has. Even the Constitution has given us powers for each one and everybody who is a Kenyan to protect this Constitution. Madam Speaker, I want to advise our colleagues and say that it is not yet over until over. This is our first win. As we move even to the High Court, Madam Speaker, let us work together. I want to thank senators who have been here. And Madam Speaker, Senator Orengo, Senator Okongo Mugeni, we have been there, and even Director of Legal Services, Dr. Okello, Mercy Tanji, advocate from the compliance, and many colleagues, even learned retired judge, Stewart Manzayo, have been the forefront on following we have a conclusion. Madam Speaker, finally, I want to say this one has given us as a House the opportunity in line with Article 96 to do our major role by ensuring we push more allocation of funds to counties. Even as we move ahead, Madam Speaker, pushing more to ensure more resources go to counties, I want to call our colleagues that we must also develop mechanisms to ensure those funds that are allocated to the counties, accountability and transparency are made to those funds, Madam Speaker. And therefore, I want to tell senators, go ye and ensure that even as we allocate more funds to the counties, we demand for more services, we demand for accountability, we demand for transparency for those allocations that we have given. So, Madam Speaker, this is a win. I want to thank everybody who participated. I want to thank my committee, Moaso, Madam Speaker, and my secretariat, because we work tirelessly to ensure your office was brought up to speed, even the Senate Business Committee, when this process is ongoing. And I want to say it's not over until over, Madam Speaker, and even in future, even some of us will be the chairs or not. I hope we will be able to conclude this matter when it comes to fullness of time. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Senator Mora.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise to really congratulate the Senate team and all of us as a House, because, Madam Speaker, you remember how we marched from here to the High Court in Milimani, how you were holding hands, and how people like Professor Ongeri, I don't know whether he's still in the House, yes, we were encouraging each other despite his very young age, to actually move. And that was really a march of solidarity, because it actually showed that we as senators, we can be bipartisan in defending the institution of the Senate. And from my own cursory look, it's actually the way in which some people envisaged the Senate is supposed to be an appendage of Parliament itself. It's not supposed to be a house of debate. And yet, when I listen to the way we execute our issues here, there is a lot of maturity. There is a lot of, well-reasoned, submissions. And that actually is a cogency that the drafters of the Constitution were looking, that this is actually a house of revision, a house where people come and they are measured. They look at things objectively. And even when you disagree respectively. And so, Madam Speaker, this morning, our committee, the Senate Finance and Budget Committee, was invited by the BBI team to go and make submissions on some of the issues that have already been canvassed in this advisory opinion. Because certainly, going forward, the question was, which aspects of the Constitution needs to be streamlined with regards to Division of Revenue Bill and the County Allocation of Revenue Bill. And interestingly, if you are to look at the history of the Division of Revenue Bill, when that matter arose, I happened to have been in the National Assembly, and it was opined that Division of Revenue Bill should not be brought to the Senate. And I think, honestly, one of the things that the Senate seems to suffer with, I don't want to say from, with, is the fact of that institutional capacity and memory. Because you see, we are a very nascent institution, as it were. We are actually the second Senate of the second Senate, if you know what, the second Senate of the second Senate. Yeah, exactly, that's the point. And so therefore, we have then therefore to be the ones who are the pioneers. We are the people who have to do the bulwark of justifying the very existence of this august house. And so therefore, I think it is important. At that point in the 11th Parliament, there was also another advisory opinion that was sought. And I think that these are just mere suggestions. And I am very happy, Senator Okongo Omugeni, and congratulations for being the chair of the delegated legislation. I believe with your new power, you will be able to help this house also to make the proper regulations that would also see that whatever we legislate is implemented. But also going forward that we have now known that actually the Supreme Court does not exist to just make mere suggestions. That actually whatever they say, they are binding. Because this is the constitutional court. This is a court that actually determines when there are disputes to do with the fundamental matters of the supreme law of the land. And Madam Speaker, sorry, I want to really say that with that unity and sense of purpose, we should not tire in our quest to ensure that the Senate occupies its rightful role as the upper house of Parliament. This is something we must pursue, even when there are any changes to the Constitution, and I was speaking to Senator Orengo yesterday, the leader of minority, that this is something we need to pursue with utmost persistence and excellence, because that way, from the experience that we have already shown, is that the country stands to benefit, to gain from this, such an endeavor. And in fact, if we are to pursue a Senate that is a superior house, it should be able to have veto powers on all legislation. This house also should be able to have powers on money bills, because it is inconceivable to have any form of legislation that does not involve drawing from the exchequer. Because when you are legislating, you have to implement the law. You cannot implement the law in abstraction. And if you are to look at even the rule of law, as it were, the rules of natural justice may not be codified through legislation. In fact, there is a difference between law and legislation. Because legislation is about an innovative legislator going to make some rules and regulations so that then you guide a certain process. You guide a certain phenomenon so that it is actually fair and just. But the rules of natural justice, which really is the source of the law, requires that you cannot have two houses of parliament that are at par. You can't, because then you are engaged in some kind of ping pong. And so therefore, I think I submit, Madam Speaker, as I support that we should work to attain that endeavor. And this is not ad hominem, it's not personal, it is not for the sake of the occupant of the seat. If you look at, for example, the role of the Senate in terms of oversight to counties, if we didn't have this Senate, counties have very limited capacity to actually oversight a governor with billions. County assemblies don't have. And there are very many, novel and virgin areas that we can actually conquer in terms of how to make legislation with regards to county governments. But at the same time, Madam Speaker, we must also be aware that we should not be balkanized. We should not end up with the two houses, one for the national government and one for county government. Our quest for the Senate to occupy its rightful role is predicated upon the fact that we can have veto powers on legislation, but also ensure that we retain our capacity to oversight the two tiers of government, especially the county governments, with regard to national policy, but also generating laws that strengthen transparency and accountability on the part of county governments. And so, Madam Speaker, without saying much, I would want to really support. I want to really congratulate the team. We are there behind you. And if you want us to be back on the streets again, we are ready and willing to do so. Madam Speaker, I submit.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Kajwang.
Madam Speaker, I must say I was enjoying the passionate appeal by Senator Mwaura, who reminds me of Paul the Turk, or the person we call Apostle Paul. The passion, the verve, the vigor with which Senator Mwaura defends the Senate. I'm glad he has had his transformation, because in the other time he was in the other house. and was a prosecutor of the Senate. And there have been some humbling experiences, I believe, in the last 3 years. I want to congratulate Senator Omogeni and the team that represented us at the Supreme Court. I'm glad to note that Senator Omogeni did his work pro bono, and I'm sure that if this House was to pay you for this contribution, we probably might not be able to afford, because this is such a great contribution to the rule of law, to democracy, and to bicameralism. And I want to assure you, Senator Omogeni, that if we do not reward you on earth, your reward shall be up there in heaven. Madam Speaker, the judiciary has once again proven that it can be a neutral arbiter to issues arising from other arms of government. It is not too far back that the judiciary gave clear guidance on the role of Senate when it comes to matters of accountability. Remember, the first 5 years of devolution, we spent in battles in court between the Council of Governors and the Senate. And the judiciary made a very clear ruling and determination on the role of the Senate in oversight. We have had battles around summons and invitation of witnesses, particularly governors, to come to this Senate. The judiciary has made it very clear that Senate has got that constitutional duty to summon any person, be they the governor, and I dare say, if the Senate or Parliament can summon any person, it would include the president or the deputy president or any other person in public life. We have probably lost once or twice. The issue of county development boards is a matter that Senate seems to have lost, but it should not be taken as a condemnation of the judiciary. By and large, the judiciary, the Supreme Court and the High Court have stood with the framers and the drafters of the Constitution in clarifying the intent and objectives of devolution and the role of the Senate in that. Madam Speaker, this being a statement, we probably might limit ourselves to congratulating the lawyers who went to court and congratulating the senators who lent their support. But there are few other issues that we might not need to labor the judiciary to interpret for us. The problem with the division of revenue begins when we do not take seriously the budget policy statement. The budget policy statement is an original definition of the intention of government as far as fiscal policy is concerned, as far as micro and macroeconomic policies are concerned. Madam Speaker, we must get an answer to the question, the views of Parliament on the budget policy statement, if they are not taken into account, what should happen? And I think there must be consequences. The Division of Revenue Act is derived from the budget policy statement. Every year, this Senate makes recommendations on the budget policy statement, and those recommendations are never taken into account. Sectoral committees, the Health Committee, Agriculture, ICT, we are always making proposals on realignment of government budget and priorities. They never see the light of day. We need to fix that. The real mediation needs to happen between the budget policy statement and the division of revenue. Mediation should not be happening between division of revenue and appropriations bill, or between division of revenue and the allocation of revenue. It needs to happen in between, and the mistake we have made is that we have given the Council of Governors and the Intergovernmental Budget and Economic Committee the power that Senate should have. Senate should intervene, the two houses should agree after the BPS and before DORA. Finally, Madam Speaker, is on the role of the Commission on Revenue Allocation. It has been determined that the CRA has an advisory role, and that the CRA's recommendations are not binding fully on Parliament. Madam Speaker, we have seen in some jurisdictions, particularly in the United Kingdom, where you have got England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland, they have devolution. Yet they do not have a body like the CRA. They agreed on a formula in the 1970s. It is called the Barnett formula. And it is that formula that was looked at, agreed on, and is used annually. The question that many people might beg to ask then, what then would be the role of a CRA as a permanent commission? Should it be a permanent commission, or should it be a sessional body that comes after every 3 years to review the formula? And we need a standing body to review the formula. Can't we have a Barnett formula similar to the United Kingdom, a formula that is fixed? Madam Speaker, it is upon the CRA to reinvent itself. It is a constitutional commission. I cannot dissolve it by my contribution on the floor of this House, but they've got a lot of thinking. If their recommendations are not binding, then they've got a huge duty to justify their existence in the minds and in the eyes of the public in Kenya. Madam Speaker, I congratulate Senator Mogeni and the other lawyers who are representing this House in other matters that are before the court. And finally, our staff. We never take time to mention them or to load them. We have a very dedicated team of people in the legal department and in the litigation department. They do a great job under difficult circumstances. And I wish the commissioners were in this House today. We have heard reports that sometimes when we need to get lawyers for the Senate to prosecute a matter in court, the commission will plead that there's no budget for that. Shame on them. The commission must remember that it represents a bicameral system. It represents the Senate and the National Assembly, and Senate matters should not be treated as secondary issues. Our staff have done a great job, even when the Commission has refused to avail funds to represent the Senate. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Senator Matsayo. Then I'll come to Ongeri and Faria.
Asante Bispika kwa kunipa nafasi hii. Bispika, kitu cha kwanza nataka nimpatie kongole seneta mshupavu wa kisheria na seneta mkongwe wa mambo ya sheria na aliyekuwa chairman wangu katika society yetu ya wanasheria katika Kenya. Ndugu yangu ambaye anawakilisha eneo la huko Kisii la Nyamira, ndugu yangu Sam Okongo Omogendi. Kitu cha kwanza nilikuwa naangalia Bispika ni kwamba kama kuna jina la Kizungu, na nilikuwa tunajadiliana hapa na dadangu Museruve msomi, na tukaona kwamba ndugu yangu Okongo hana jina la Kizungu katika herufi zake za hapa ndani ya bunge. Yeye anaitwa Senator Okongo Omogendi. Kwa hiyo nataka kumshukuru sana kwa kukubaliana kwanza kuchukua kesi hii na kwenda kuifanya yeye, na kitu cha pili ile kesi kuifanya bila malipo kutoka kwa Parliamentary Service Commission ama kulipwa na pengine tuchange hapa kama seneta kwamba tunataka kumlipa yeye kama wakili. Aliweza kujitolea, akatumia akili zake na taaluma aliyoisomea, na hatimaye ameleta mazao ndani ya Senate. Nataka kumpatia kongole sana kwa bidii aliyoifanya. Hivi sasa tukiwa tuko hapa Bispika, pengine mara nyingi tumeona ya kwamba uamuzi utakaofanywa ndani ya koti, wengine huwa wanaupenda, wengine hawaupendelei. Lakini mimi kama mwanasheria nasema kwamba sheria ni kama panga linakata pande mbili. Wewe unaweza kupenda ama unaweza usipende, lakini sheria ni kama panga linakata pande zote mbili, na lazima likate katikati kusema kwamba huyu ndio mkweli na huyu si mkweli. Hii ndio njia sawa na hii ndio si njia sawa. Kwa hiyo sisi sote tunakubaliana na ule uamuzi uliotolewa na koti yetu ya juu zaidi kuliko koti zote katika Kenya, ya Supreme Court. Uamuzi huo ulikamana sana na taratibu za wale waliokaa pale na wakaangalia na wakaona kwamba kuna umuhimu kuwa na bunge la Senate katika Kenya. Bwana Bispika, kitu muhimu ni kwamba hivi sasa uamuzi huu umeweza kuleta baina ya bunge la kitaifa na bunge la Senate kuweza kufanya kazi pamoja bila kukosana. Na wameweza pia kuleta taarifa ya kwamba ikiwa hamutaelewana haswa kulinganishana na ugavi wa pesa ambao sisi kama maseneta tunaligamishana na vipengele cha 96 cha katiba ya Kenya inayosema kwamba jukumu la seneti ama jukumu la kila seneta atakuwa akitetea kaunti na serikali yake. Kwa hiyo ikiwa sisi majukumu yetu ni hayo, na moja wapo ni kwamba tutaangalia mambo ya ugavi wa pesa ambao ndio muhimu na uti wa mgongo wa serikali zetu za ugatuzi. Kunalo umuhimu ya kwamba watu waweze kukaa na kuweza kuelewana. The Speaker, la mwisho najua kuna hii kamati yetu, kamati ya wanasheria, ambao kamati hii ya wanasheria karibu wote pale katika hii kamati ya sheria ni wanasheria. Kwa hiyo katika majukumu haya tuliyowapa kwamba hii kesi waichukue, na sisi wengine tulipokuwa pamoja tukajukumika na hatimaye tumepata mazao, ni kitu muhimu kuona ya kwamba tumeweza kuangalia haya mazao na tukajua mwelekeo wetu utakuwa vipi kuanzia sasa mpaka siku za usoni. Asante, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Senator. I apologize, Senator Ongeri. Let me text Senator. I had signaled Senator Rose Nyamunga, and you'll be next. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me this opportunity just to add my voice to congratulate our senior member of this House, Senator Omugeni, and the entire team, the legal team in the Senate, but not only the learned friends in this House. I think this was a concern that was for all of us. Madam Speaker, I would like just to make one or two comments that when CRA was put in place, that is a whole commission that was instituted by the Constitution itself with some very good amount of money in terms of allocation to that commission, meaning that from day one, it was very important and very critical that this commission was put in place. The commission, once put in place, it has its own mandate. And the mandate was, it's a commission on revenue allocation, meaning that it is highly recognized, and whatever advisory adversary understanding or an advisory that it can give to the government or parliament must be taken very important and very, very critically. Madam Speaker, it is not about the two houses. And this win is for Kenya. Because we remember last year, we had a very long fight between the National Assembly and the Senate. And the idea was how to allocate revenue to the two levels of government. Madam Speaker, we are working, all of us, we are working for the nation called Kenya and for the people of Kenya. So when we can have a protracted war on allocation of revenue, it shows that something is actually amiss in the two houses. It's not about supremacy. It's not about who has the final word. But the most important thing is that allocation is done and the money should go to the respective governments in good time. Last year, I think it went on up to about end of the year, which made it very difficult for county governments to operate. And it was not about individuals. It's about the people of Kenya. So whatever we do as members of parliament, we should always look at the bigger picture, that the picture is about the people of Kenya and the service delivery to the people of Kenya. So to me, this is a win for Kenya. It's not a win for the Senate. It's not a win for the National Assembly, but for the people of Kenya. And it is unfortunate that we can go through a round and round circle just to show our supremacy. It is wrong, Madam Speaker, and this ruling has put it to an end, that it is not about the supremacy that we fight for in Kenya. Madam Speaker, secondly, there is no way we can appropriate any resources without knowing, first of all, how much money should go to the national government and how much money should go to the county governments. So in my view, I say, how do you appropriate what you don't have or what figure you don't even know? So putting the figures in place, first of all, and doing the appropriation, that is what the law says. And there is no way we should try to beat that, just for the sake of looking for supremacy. Madam Speaker, I really want to congratulate the team that took it upon themselves from, day in, day out, from last year to this day that now we can say that there is a ruling. And I think even the Supreme Court, why should the Supreme Court be in place if whatever advice it gives does not matter? So the advice that can come from, that comes from the Supreme Court must also be respected. And there is a reason that when parties cannot agree, like last time we could not agree, and it was so protracted. So advice from the Supreme Court should be taken in seriously, just as at the same time, any advice that comes from the CRA is also very critical. Because CRA goes through a lot of work to look at all aspects of revenue allocation to make sure that this is the right amount for this particular, if it is for whatever categories that have been put in place, Madam Speaker. So CRA to me is critical, Supreme Court is very critical, and the people of Kenya should be the first and most important thing that we should be looking at when it comes to revenue allocation. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Sam Ongeri.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to also add my voice and congratulate Senior Counsel Okongo Mogeni. There's value for having senior members of the council in this Senate chamber. That in itself qualifies this house to be the upper house, because we get people who can argue out our case very well. Having said that, Madam Speaker, the Constitution recognizes that there shall be two types of government: the national government and the county government. So once you have a government in place, that government is expected to have resources to run the functions, all the functions of the government that are required to be run either at the national level or at the county level. Two, Madam Speaker, the Constitution clearly stipulates that there shall be two parliaments, the National Assembly and the Senate. And the Constitution clearly defines what the Senate must do and what the National Assembly must do. And unfortunately, there's been a quarrel between the Senate and the National Assembly on the question of the division of revenue bill, or DORA. This has been the thorn in the flesh, which has now culminated in the Supreme Court giving us an advisory, and a very, very important advisory that will lead us to the future. I want to tag in on the earlier statement made by Senator Kachwang, that really, what are we arguing about? We are arguing about resources, revenue-raising measures that will give any national government the resources necessary to be able to divide between the national government and the county government. And you cannot be able to divide these resources and appropriate them without knowing how they are being divided between the two levels of government. This has been the thorn in the flesh. And therefore, this advisory has helped us, first of all, to confirm and reaffirm that the DORA is important, and you cannot be able to do appropriation bill in the National Assembly without, first of all, determining the position of DORA vis-a-vis the national government and the county government division of revenue. Two, one of the biggest headache has been that while we are still continuing arguing about DORA, the national government was already appropriating money on vote on account up to 31st of December. And the county governments were miserably running up and about, putting pressure on us to accept and going through other shortcuts to be able to accept the formula for them to be able to access the money to run the counties. This advisory has determined also, I don't know whether I read you right, Senior Mogeni, that while this DORA is going on, that the county government can also access 50% of the revenue on account, vote on account, which is an important milestone because then our county governments cannot be put under pressure to be able, while we're still arguing on whether we have agreed or not agreed. So that's another milestone as I see it. And thirdly, Madam Speaker, now that we have the tools in our hands, how do we institutionalize? I think the advisory is good enough, but I think now we must reach a level where we institutionalize the advisory into a legal framework, or whether in the form of legal framework or in the form of regulations on how these things must be done. And I will urge, again, our legal department, with our legal minds in the legal department in the Senate, to sit down and quickly draft a bill to come before this House so we can institutionalize this ruling, the advisory which has come from the Supreme Court. Because if we don't do that, then we leave ourselves open that in future, any voter can go to court if we argue endlessly without agreeing on DORA and be able to request that the two houses must be dissolved. And there will be no way, because the Supreme Court has given us enough warning, there will be no way we can escape that. We will just simply be dissolved. But we don't want to get that level again, which will be an expensive affair, both for the nation and for everybody going for fresh elections, and the ramification that it will have on expenses for the national government and for the county governments. Therefore, we want to institutionalize this, and we remain advised as a Senate plenary how this can be brought in so we can be able to pass it in the form of a law and negotiate with the National Assembly. And finally, Madam Speaker, there's been this nagging problem of oversight funds. The fact now is that we are handling money. When we get involved in the division of revenue, and of course the CARA later on, count allocation revenue process, that's money bill. And I hope that once we appropriate this money to the county governments, we cannot just appropriate money to go and sit there, and they use them, the county governments use them as in the manner in which they desire to use them without being oversighted. And I think there is now a case for us. While we're going to do that, institutionalize the advisory, we must now make it mandatory within the law framework that oversight fund is not a matter that we must beg anybody for. It's a consequential effect of what it means to have DORA in place. And therefore, it should not be anything that must now be negotiated outside the framework of the advisory that we have received from the Supreme Court. That it should be okay for us to get the oversight funds so that we can effectively then be able to oversight the resources and funds that are being made available to our counties. Let me again thank Senator Okongo Mogeni and his team for ably representing us and giving us a very fundamental conclusion in the legal tussle that has been going on between us, the National Assembly, and the governors. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Senator Faria.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to also air my views around this issue. Madam Speaker, and I also wish to thank Senator Omugeni for being diligent in terms of ensuring that the rights of the counties and the role of Senate is protected. Madam Speaker, we cannot take him for granted, so I wish to thank him for doing a good job. Madam Speaker, the other issue is around if we don't legislate, then we all go home. And I think Senator Umugeni, given that you are a senior counsel and in terms of knowledge of the law, you're an expert, I think you should even sponsor a bill. But there's also another bill that is in Finance Committee that is also considering, Madam Speaker, as you're a member of that committee, that was considering, and then we must also fast track that law as well. Madam Speaker, the idea of appropriation bill not being passed before DORA, for me, is a landmark ruling. And, it gives Senate, the ability to ensure that we negotiate on behalf of county on a fair playground. Because before, counties would suffer and government will run business as usual. Madam Speaker, if you have a cake, and this cake is supposed to be shared by 2 people, and before that cake is shared, someone is eating that cake. Madam Speaker, if that is not unfair, I don't know what is fair. Madam Speaker, and then it beats logic. You cannot appropriate what you don't have, because DORA is what divides money between counties and national government. Madam Speaker, and I hope with the referendum and BBI ongoing discussion will ensure that Senate will have its place where it deserves. Because they are very senior people here. They are very senior, who have won landmark cases. Like, we have 3 senior counsels in this house. And Madam Speaker, if the deliberation of such high caliber people go down the drain because in the name of, this is a money bill, without even, due consideration. Like, for example, there was a statistics bill, county statistics bill, that was passed in this house in 2018, Madam Speaker. And that would have made a difference in terms of how the accountability for counties. Because if you have the statistics and data to prove that a dweller of a county is much more better or much more poorer than the previous, Madam Speaker, that would have been a bill that would have made a difference in terms of the people's lives. And it would have given them better information whether to give governor another chance or to send him packing home, Madam Speaker. Because, it's not about spending money alone in terms of figures. Those figures have an impact. If you spent millions, how many people of those that you spent those millions on have moved from poverty, below the poverty line, to where they have meals on their table, Madam Speaker? And that's the difference, Madam Speaker. Statisticians can bring to fore. But, Madam Speaker, that bill is gathering dust in the National Assembly, Madam Speaker. So I think in terms of the Constitution, we have the constitutional experts here. Let us make sure that when this document is being developed, Senate becomes a winner. Madam Speaker, if Senate does not become a winner, trust me, we will nail devolution in the coffin, Madam Speaker. And we would have been part of that problem, Madam Speaker. The other thing is, when the DORA, there was an impasse on the DORA, everybody in the government continued spending. And that created I don't care attitude, Madam Speaker. Because if the appropriation bill is not passed before the DORA, then that means, including this house, there will be no salary. So that will motivate people now to come to the negotiating table and ensure that a fairer process has been passed. Madam Speaker, and then the other issue is around this house not part of being IBEC. Because I think also that's a problem in my view. Because once people make a decision, and the governors more often already agree to the figures that they are given. Like this year, 316 was for the previous year. The year coming is 316. There is no factor of population growth. There is also no factor of inflation. And Madam Speaker, there is no economy that is static. And then the same, how are you even going to handle? And then that problem will be compounded by the change of formula now as presented by CRA. Some counties are losing as much as 3 billion shillings. How do they even sustain their current operations? It's impossible. So there's a lot of things that this landmark ruling is taking care of. Madam Speaker, as much as we protect the counties, there is a lot of public plunder in the counties, Madam Speaker. And unless that is not addressed, then, Madam Speaker, we can be appropriating more money for counties that is eventually ending up in people's pocket, Madam Speaker. Sorry, I can't even drink water. So it's just... So, Madam Speaker, I think there is a need for more accountability. I call upon the institutions like EACC, DCI, and all these other institutions that are supposed to handle economic crime. I think they need to live up to the dreams of Kenya when they passed the constitution to allow them to exist. And I think it's high time that they repay back Kenya and take some action on county officials who plunder government resources. Madam Speaker, I think President Uhuru Kenyatta was on record several times that one of the legacy he wants to leave is to ensure that this country is corrupt-free. But I think we are even growing more corrupt, and there is no one to check that. Madam Speaker, and I think in terms of SAPAC and other institutions that we have that check, I think we need a lot of work to do. We make the correct recommendation as a House, but in terms of the institutions that are supposed to take that from where we live to the next level does not exist. Once again, I wish to thank Senior Counsel Okongo Mugeni and the legal team for the Senate that are all brilliant, Madam Speaker. I had an opportunity of working with them on several bills, and Madam Speaker, I think there's none like them. I wish to thank everybody for that. Good job, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Faria. Finally, I think Senator Were.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you for the opportunity to also contribute to the statement by Senior Counsel Okongo Mugeni. Madam Speaker, this win is not just for this House, but it's also a win for devolution. And making a ruling or giving an advisory opinion that strengthens this Senate is also strengthening devolution. And Madam Speaker, we know very well that Senate's role is to protect devolution, counties, and their governments. So I would say congratulations to Senator Okongo Mugeni, his team, and even senators here who joined them in court to fight for strengthening this Senate and to fight for the right thing. Madam Speaker, going back to the advisory, I keep wondering sometimes if we run this country like we don't know what we are doing. How do you share out what you do not know? It seems logical, it seems common sense, but what blinds us that we cannot see something that is so obvious? You're being told share out, but you don't know what exactly it is you're sharing out. So this advisory opinion is important so that we are reminded. We are not blinded by superiority complexes. We are not blinded by egos, but we are able to see the right thing to do. And we are not doing this just for ourselves, but we are doing this for Kenyans. Madam Speaker, that advisory opinion also allowed counties to have access to 50% of the funds that they are allocated to, that have been allocated to them the previous year. Just in case, again, we lose our heads and decide to fight amongst ourselves as if we are fighting for ourselves and not for the country. We have also been given direction. This advisory opinion, Madam Speaker, has also given us the power from the previous advisory opinion. It has declared that advisory opinions are also judgments, so that they are not considered as advice, that you can either take it or leave it. It has said that their advisory opinions from the Supreme Court is a judgment, and we are bound by it. So it will be interesting to look at the case that is at the High Court, what exactly they are going to say. But I'm very optimistic with this advisory opinion from the Supreme Court. I'm very optimistic with the ruling that will come from the High Court. Madam Speaker, I want again to congratulate Senator Okongo Mogeni. And Okongo Mogeni and his team are a representation of the rich resource in this Senate. Just like Senator Farhia was saying, that the senators in this House are endowed with experience, they are endowed with knowledge that goes to the drain because of the work they do here, being looked down upon against the Constitution by the other House. We have several bills that are lying, gathering dust in the National Assembly that were meant to strengthen devolution. They are declared money bill without any other further explanation, even to the sponsors of those bills. Even if National Assembly took those bills, made them theirs, put in whatever it is they want to do, and make those bills pass for the benefit of Kenyans. So I pray that this advisory opinion closes the matter, brings to a halt this superiority fight between the Senate and the National Assembly, and the Senate will be looked upon, continue to be looked upon, as the house of experience, even as they call it, the house of the old people. Old people have wisdom, and the young people have energy, but that energy will be misdirected if it is not followed by wisdom. So I thank you, Madam Speaker, and continue to ask that we make use of the Senate resource to benefit Kenyans as it should be. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Were. Senator Abshiro Halake.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I know time has passed, but I cannot not congratulate my colleague, Senior Counsel Senator Omogeni. I work with him on the COVID committee, and I can attest to the fact that he brings a lot of experience, a lot of passion to the work he does. But also just what struck me just last few days is just how much he stands up for the less fortunate. So congratulations, Senator Omogeni. This was a fantastic win, as everybody has said, not just for this House, but for this country. Madam Speaker, what is really remarkable about this ruling by the Supreme Court is also the fact that for a long time, Houses of Parliament, both the Senate and the National Assembly, have been accused of abdicating their role in the budget-making process or in the resource stewardship process. A time when we were told that we, as parliamentarians, have slept on the job when it came to the entire process of budget-making. The budget policy statement where, the estimates were being discussed, then the division of revenue, the appropriation bills, and the entire continuum, we were accused. And I think to some extent there was some truth to it. But today, with this fight at the highest level of our judiciary to ensure that the right advisory is given to us so that then we take our rightful role in the budget-making process is really landmark and really commendable for the team and for the entire Senate that has taken this upon themselves. Madam Speaker, within the BPS process and within all these stages, there's the stage where we appropriate or divide amongst many items. But even before we get there, as everybody has said, the division of revenue should be first order of business, and therefore we're very grateful to the to the Supreme Court for upholding the Constitution that you must start with first things first, divide the revenue and then appropriate it. So I think we are very happy with that. But most importantly now, we need to look at separating the whole issue of plunder at the counties. We cannot, under the guise of plunder at the counties, then overlook the fact that the counties must first get their rightful share of the revenue, first of all. But this House then, it becomes incumbent upon us to ensure that the right oversight mechanisms or tools are there
so that the counties are well, you know, oversighted, and to ensure that then whatever it is that they have in their coffers does not go to waste, as has been happening. So those are two different issues that this House must really separate, because sometimes we're told, why are you fighting for resources for the counties? It's going to be eaten anyway. But these are two different issues that we must make sure, A, they get the counties get the resources they need, and therefore devolution prospers, and then put in place mechanisms and tools to ensure that oversight takes place. So with those few remarks, Madam Speaker, I thank you for the opportunity and congratulate the team of the senators led by Senator Mogeni that made sure that this ruling was got, and look forward to the implementation of some of the provisions within the ruling. I thank you.
Thank you, Senators. It brings us to the end of the statement. We will now do the next statement by Senator Dr. Musoreva.
Madam Speaker, thank you for giving me an opportunity to put forward this statement on learning progression of learners with disability during the current COVID-19 pandemic. Honorable Speaker, I rise pursuant to Standing Order 48-1 to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on Education concerning the learning progression of learners with disability during the current COVID-19 pandemic. In the statement, the committee should, 1, state and explain measures put in place to ensure that the needs of learners with neurodevelopmental challenges are met. 2, explain mechanisms put in place to ensure that deaf learners are achieving parity with other learners. 3, elucidate processes put in place to ensure that parents of learners with disabilities are able to help and manage their children's educational needs while at home. 4, explain measures put in place to ensure that learners with disabilities are able to complete the syllabus when schools reopen without being disadvantaged. And Honorable Speaker, just allow me to comment a bit on this statement that when it comes to children with disabilities, even before the COVID period set in, they were highly disadvantaged in terms of education. Even when it comes to digital learning, Honorable Speaker, before even the COVID period, most of the content had not been digitized. At the moment, you'll find that education learners who have televisions...
Senator, just to take you backwards, are you making a statement or you are debating? I thought you were making a statement. So please make the statement. Or when you are engaging me here. Senator, you don't need to belabor that statement. We just want to refer it. Yeah, we are referring because we have other. You know, we can allow comments, or we can just refer it to another committee, to the relevant committee. So just wind up, and then we will move forward.
Okay. Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I want to state that when it comes to issues of learners with disabilities, most of the time they are forgotten, and it's important that the Committee of Education, where I sit, ensures that the Ministry of Education comes in to give a statement that will really ensure that we are satisfied that when it comes to issues of disability, learners with disabilities are being catered for. Because when you look at authentic information on the ground, actually they are highly disadvantaged. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Senator. We refer that statement to the Committee Committee of Education. I do not know if, but I think that should be communicated to the committee. I don't see the chair. I don't see the deputy chair. So it will be communicated to the Committee of Education. Honorable Senators, we want to defer some of these the standing orders because I don't seem to be seeing the relevant senators. So we want to defer order number 18, order number 8, we defer order number 9, we defer order number 10, we defer order number 11, order number 12, order number 13. Yes, Senator Malala.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Just to seek directions from the chair before we leave order number 7. 3 weeks ago, Madam Speaker, I raised a question and through a statement seeking clarification on the unprocedural demotion of one Joel Lutomia. And the chair then gave directions to the chairperson of the COVID committee, stating clearly that a specific report was supposed to be brought to this house with specific recommendations so that this house can adopt the recommendations or reject the recommendations. Last week, I raised the concern to the chair, and the chair gave out a ruling which was that the chairperson of the COVID committee was supposed to come up with the report today. Madam Speaker, as we leave order number 7, I have still not received the said answers on the unprocedural removal of Dr. Joel Lutomia. I would like that this house to take this matter seriously. Let the chairperson be told that we are waiting for the answers,
Senator,
and we shall not now.
it is clear. I remember that statement last week. I don't see the chair, Senator Sakaja. I don't see the deputy chair. And I think it should be communicated that next week there should be a concrete. Oh, Senator Abshiro, do you have any idea about the statement that Senator Malala is referring to?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, yes, I am aware of it, and the committee has actually done quite a bit on executing that statement. Madam Chair, we have actually spoken to KEMRI. We have sent letters to the Public Service Commission, and we have had a sitting, but we haven't concluded that matter, Madam Speaker, given that the sittings are remote, but we will definitely get back on that individual one. I can't remember, I wasn't in the House at the time, if we were doing it as part of the COVID response or it was that the particular statement was referred to us. So and that's the reason why I think the
Senator, there was a specific request that the circumstances under which the said officer was either demoted or dismissed should be brought to the House, clearly stating the reasons. And I don't know if the delay is on your side or other organizations like KEMRI. I think we should be clear on this because it's an urgent matter.
I stand guided, Madam Speaker. I wasn't quite sure if it was given to our committee or the Health Committee, but yes, we have that we have actually dealt with that. We will extract it and give it as a separate response.
Do we give you next Tuesday?
Yes.
Please do communicate that to the committee and let's have a concrete response.
Guided.
Yes, Senator Were.
Madam Speaker, just on the same issue of committee chairs and giving us answers, the statements today, my statement on the status of governance in agricultural state corporations, and my statement on the mass recruitment for counties for health. The Speaker just told the chairs to expedite. But listening to what Senator Malala is talking about, I would like that those committees be given a specific timeline so that they are tied to the, because some of these issues are topical, Madam Speaker.
When was your statement due? Because normally they are given like 2 weeks. Is 2
Yes,
weeks?
they weren't given any timeline. I gave the statement today.
Or today?
Yes.
Okay, and that one goes to the Minister of Education, the Chair of
Agricultural.
Education, Agriculture and Health.
Yes, Public Service Commission.
Public Service, there's no committee.
So there's
for
Labor Committee and Agricultural Committee.
Okay, I don't see the chairs, I don't see their deputies in the House, but let it be communicated. And I think 2 weeks, is 2 weeks okay with you?
Yes, Madam Speaker, much obliged.
Fine, we give 2 weeks for the response to your statement. I think we have deferred all the order numbers up to 14. Up to 13, and now we continue from 14. And Senator Shiro was either on the floor or is supposed to give a reply. So, Senator, are you ready to do that?
Order number 14.
Oh, sorry.
Motion, 4th and 5th progress reports of the ad hoc committee on COVID-19 situation in Kenya.
Senator Shiro, you are supposed to second it.
Yeah. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I had actually started, and I will continue. Madam Speaker, thank you very much for the opportunity to. So I stand to second the 4th and the 5th progress report of the ad hoc committee on COVID-19 situation. Madam Speaker, we had spoken to the 4th. We'll go straight to the 5th report, which was on the thematic area of finances and economy. Madam Speaker, the chair had already spoken quite a lot about this on the situation that we all find ourselves in, occasioned by the pandemic. Madam Speaker, the significant negative impact is something that we've all lived with, and on the key sectors of the economy, including the trade, tourism, agriculture, manufacturing, and related sectors. The preliminary growth for the Kenyan 2020 was projected to decline by 3%, as the chair had mentioned, but now further projections are being made to the effect that our GDP might just be growing below 2%, which then means that a lot of the economic sectors have been bashed. The agricultural sector have been heavily affected by this pandemic, as most of us can relate to, as a result of the reduced export earnings and loss of income due to low global demand for our agricultural products and exports. We also have the reduced demand for exports and declining prices for commodities in the international markets, compounding the drop in tourist arrivals. Madam Speaker, the tourist industry has been literally wiped out, as most of us know. I don't want to go into the details because these are details that are there, and I hope that the senators can interact with the report, because the official foreign exchange reserves held by central bank as well, which stood at about $8 million, has now gone down by February to about by about 5.4%. So again, what we're looking at is that all the revenues from different resources have all come down, which then puts a big burden on KRA, to the point where perhaps we may even, experience a collapse in our revenue collection, which really is something that we are praying and hoping that the economy will not get to. But there's also declining foreign remittance. As you know, most Kenyans abroad have lost their livelihoods and are now, in fact, themselves very vulnerable, and as they don't have any work. We're also seeing an overall fiscal deficit, including grants for the period. I don't want to belabor that as well, because the chair had very eloquently done that. The current deficits, therefore, projected between 4 to 4.6% of GDP, compared to 4.62 in 2019. As a result, the lower international oil prices, the oil import bill is expected to be low and will counterbalance, hopefully, and provide some sort of relief. There's need for the government then to put in place measures to cushion macro, micro, small, and medium enterprises and the Juakali sector. So these are the observations of the committee. Businesses that most rely on imports have scaled down and are almost earning nothing. Loss of income on account of job losses is across all sectors. Payment of pending bills, this is something that this House is very familiar with. Again, these are some of the observations. But please allow me, Madam Speaker, to just take the House to some of the observations, but also some of the recommendations, so that then we don't belabor, because I know that this House, every senator lives this reality, and every senator has been following these developments, and therefore I do not wish to take too much time just to belabor the observations. If you allow me, I'll go straight to the recommendations that we have in our report from. Okay. So the first recommendation, the Cabinet Secretary for Industrialization, Trade and Enterprise Development gazettes regulations establishing the Micro and Small Enterprise Development Fund, especially under Section 51 of the Macro and Small Enterprise Act, number 55 of 2012, and present a report to the Senate within 60 days. Another observation, and therefore occasioning another observation that's occasioning this recommendation is the fact that the small enterprises are the hardest hit, and to enhance accountability for the oversight over the COVID emergency fund. As you know, a lot of questions have come up on that, and other funds established at the national and county levels, the National Treasury and the county treasuries to submit monthly income and expenditure statements. Madam Speaker, and to hasten the disbursement of funds to counties, the counties should comply to the rules and regulations set by the oversight bodies to facilitate funds disbursement. Madam Speaker, a lot of counties are telling us we could not do ABCD because we haven't got our revenue, our disbursements. Again, these are our recommendations. And to support the micro and small-sized enterprises to continue their businesses during the pandemic, government to hasten the planned liquidity support for small and medium enterprises through credit to banks and other financial institutions to further promote this sector. Again, as the chair has said, the central bank has done quite a lot with regards to setting up platforms, with regard to setting up mitigation measures for borrowers. They have done quite a bit with regards to liquidity management to other banks, so that for onward lending to small and medium-sized enterprises. So we encourage this and commend the central bank for the measures they have taken, and to reduce disruption to the supply chain, counties to facilitate little markets. Therefore, I think the recommendations are far-reaching and very extensive, but let me jump to contain the public debt. Again, public debt is becoming a real area of concern, which this House should really take note of, given that governments are spending quite a lot without being able to collect as much, and therefore the imbalance and perhaps the collapse on one side of the revenue and the expenditure that is so much heightened on another side becomes then an issue that this House needs to look at. So to contain the public debt at sustainable levels, the committee then recommends that the National Treasury takes decisive action to curtail spending through austerity measures in order to reduce the size of the fiscal deficit. You've heard, Madam Speaker, questions are being asked about how much does tea cost, how much does forms for COVID cost. So we are recommending that, and to reduce the extent possible commercial borrowing by gradually shifting to concessional money from perhaps the multilateral and other bilateral organizations that are not charging market rates on commercial banks, cancellation and reallocation and these. So, Madam Speaker, again, we have very many, about 10 recommendations. I'm not going to go through all of these. I would like the senators, we have the reports available to interact with these reports and to make to support the implementation thereof. On debt issues, again, negotiations to be considered on debt swaps. I think this was mentioned already by our chair. Importantly, on support to women, the youth, persons with disabilities, and other vulnerable groups, the committee recommends the upscaling of training to enable these groups start and operate businesses efficiently. Additionally, that these groups be prioritized for award of business stimulus funding and opportunities to supply goods and services to the national and county governments. Madam Speaker, at the community level, monitoring and evaluation of frameworks for considered to ensure proper oversight of emergency COVID funds at both the national and county levels. And this is where we are also asking our county assemblies to please make sure that they do the primary oversight, because as it happens, everything is being brought to the Senate when primary oversight should happen at the county level, with only the secondary or the more complicated or perhaps the more national looking or affecting all counties coming to the Senate. Madam Speaker, I think for us as a committee, as you know, we have dealt with putting all this in 5 thematic areas. This is the thematic area that was looking at the financial and economic issues of affecting the country. And so we have in a subsequent progress report, that's the progress report number 6, issues pertaining to social justice, public order, and human rights. So if this just sounds very economic stimulus and very economic tools, or very much aligned to monetary policy, that is because there's another thematic area that would then drill down these broad areas of economic tools and economic policy instruments to then the social issues that would affect the common mwananchi and the Kenyan at large, which is the social justice, public order, and human rights. So this is the next report that hasn't been tabled, which will be tabled, and therefore I will seek to second and request that the senators look at these issues, which are the broad economic issues that are affecting our country, and the broad economic measures that both the central bank, the Bankers Association, the SMEs, and our Ministry of Industrialization, and our sectors such as our key economic sectors such as tourism and others have put in place to ensure that we then mitigate against these issues. Madam Speaker, I beg to second and look forward to then giving the other report, because these reports have been organized, Madam Speaker, in a hierarchy that starts from the broad and the macro to the micro and to the individual. So this is how we're going down, and the next report, the 6th report, would then be one on social justice, public order, and human rights. So I second.
I now propose the question that the state adopts the 4th and 5th progress reports of the ad hoc committee on COVID-19 situation in Kenya, laid on the table of the Senate on Tuesday, 5th May 2020, and on Tuesday, 12th May 2020, respectively. Senator Omugeni.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I want to put it on record, Madam Speaker, that I serve in the COVID-19 Senate Ad hoc Committee, and I want to affirm to the House, Madam Speaker, that the recommendations that are contained in the report that were tabled before this House were due to very wide stakeholders' consultations. Madam Speaker, in arriving at our report, we have had meetings with the CS Treasury, we have had meetings with the Kenya Bankers Association, we have had meetings with the judiciary to discuss issues of fast-tracking hearings and to adopt technology in hearing of cases so that we can have income for the government, because we are living in very extraordinary times. And what is important, Madam Speaker, is that various people have appeared before us, have expressed a lot of hope that they have a lot of faith in this House, Madam Speaker. Even the bill that was tabled before this House, Madam Speaker, has attracted a lot of interest from stakeholders. The Law Society of Kenya has appeared before us. The International Commission of Jurists over 5 law firms, Madam Speaker, appeared before the ad hoc committee to give their views on the bill. So this is again a vote of confidence on the work that we undertake as senators. To be realistic, Madam Speaker, we are living in very extraordinary times. And the CS Treasury was candid that this country will experience a dip in the collections by Kenya Revenue Authority. Madam Speaker, as we all know, the hospitality industry is almost non-functional. Hotels have closed down. Tourists are no longer coming, Madam Speaker. Our skies are closed. Literally speaking, Madam Speaker, this is the kind of dip in the tourism sector that has never been experienced ever. This country gained independence. So our people, the people we represent, must be realistic that it will not be business as usual, Madam Speaker. The reality is that we will not meet our targets in terms of tax collection. But also, on the other hand, Madam Speaker, we must, as people's representatives, put in place measures of cushioning Kenyans. Madam Speaker, when we had a meeting with the CS Labor, Madam Speaker, we did make a request that money that is sent to the senior citizens of this country, we should have another fresh campaign so that we register more Kenyans who are vulnerable, who are above 65 years old, so that they can receive the 2,000 shillings that is given to them every month, so that they can have money that can support them. Madam Speaker, we also raised a number of serious concerns, including, Madam Speaker, the congestions that are being seen in our banks, because our senior citizens literally must go physically to the bank to receive the money. And we asked the CS to consider paying these our senior citizens through M-Pesa platform. And I'm happy that Senator Faria is in the House. Some of the concerns we are being given is that some people in northern Kenya do not have access to mobiles. They have never known the importance of buying mobiles. Almost unbelievable to some of us. But we are being told that that is the reality on the ground in some parts of northern Kenya. But again, Madam Speaker, we don't want to expose our senior citizens going to crowd in banks. I gave an example of what happened in Nyamira, in Nyamira town and in Keroka, where so many people went to the banks to collect their money, and it rained on them. They all ran into the bank, and there was nothing like social distancing. If anybody had COVID-19 in that bank that day, almost 100 Kenyans would have caught this COVID-19 disease. So going forward, Mr. Speaker, and that should be one of the wins, the quick, oh, sorry.
You are on a point of order? Information. Senator, you need that information? Go ahead, Senator.
I will not mind being informed by Senator Faria, my good friend.
Senator Faria.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I think where I come from, access to mobile phone is much, much more better than access to banks. So I want to refute that claim. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Are you sure?
Yes, Madam Speaker, I am sure.
Senator Mugani.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Speaker. And I think if you go through the answer, those were the concerns we raised with the CS Labor, Honorable Chelugoi, because we were not being convinced that there are some parts of this country, even if you make reference to northern Kenya, where there is no access to mobile. Because we were reminding the CS that there are now mobiles which are as cheap as 1,500. And we are of the view that most Kenyans have access to these gadgets. But then again, another concern was raised. This being Kenya, we were told that the level of illiteracy is very high, and that provincial how can I call them? They are no longer provincial administration. County, national government, county administration. That is the chiefs and sub-chiefs had reported cases whereby senior citizens who are illiterate, who are being sent money, were being conned by their grandchildren, whereby when they receive 2,000, they are told that you have received 200 shillings. So the national government was of the view that the safest way to ensure that this money reaches beneficiaries, to ensure that they go physically to the bank and then they receive their cash. Another problem that was brought to our attention is the fact that at times people die, but the survivors of the deceased never disclose that the beneficiary is dead. So they continued picking money from the system that was in place, from the chief and assistant chiefs, and sharing this money among themselves. But the win that we have so far achieved through this ad hoc committee is that we were able to convince the CS Labor to pay our senior citizens in a staggered manner, so that when this money is sent, Madam Speaker, maybe those whose names start with alphabetical A to D are told to go to the bank on Monday, then F maybe to another figure in the alphabetical order, go on a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, so that we avoid overcrowding. The positive results also, Madam Speaker, is that the judiciary, we had a meeting with the judiciary, and we were able to convince them that they should put in place mechanisms where cases can be heard through embracing technology, and we advised the judiciary to consider taking the situation to the near normal, whereby there is a cost list for cases, and lawyers can appear before courts through Zoom or any other platform. And I'm happy to report that that is now happening. So there are a number of quick gains that this committee has been able to achieve. We had a meeting with the CS in charge of youth and ICT, and we implored upon him to ensure that he extends support to the judiciary, because there were some courts, I think we were given an example of courts like Migori, where there was no infrastructure to support cases being heard online, and I'm happy to report that now there is support that has been extended to regions like Migori, and there's progress being made. But there are also concerns, Madam Speaker, including the deadline for making returns to the Kenya Revenue Authority on some statutory payments is tomorrow. But there are stakeholders who have raised concerns that what happens to, for example, people who are in Isili, who may not be able to leave Isili and go to their offices to make their online payments. And I think as we go forward, we are trying to extend our engagements with the Kenya Revenue Authority so that people who have found themselves in a situation where they have to respect the government restrictions on movement are not penalized by Kenya Revenue Authority. I think this is a period where we need understanding and extension of understanding and courtesy from our statutory bodies like Kenya Revenue Authority. Madam Speaker, it will be sad if in the midst of all this pandemic, some people are faced with punitive measures from coercive bodies like Kenya Revenue Authority. On the issue of income from for landlords, Madam Speaker, this has been fairly emotive, and we have, as a committee, taken the view that in as much as many Kenyans find themselves in a situation where things are not normal as they are supposed to be, we also must protect the real estate sector so that the issue of payment of rent and pardon by the landlord should be left to the tenant and the landlord, and there should be least interference from this committee or this house on matters that touch on contractual relationship between tenant and the landlord. Because, Madam Speaker, that sector is fragile, it's a sector that is growing, it's a sector that contributes a lot to the economy of this country, and we have to be careful how we deal with these issues so that we don't cause it to collapse. So, by and large, Madam Speaker, the committee is making very good progress on the work that was given to it by this House, and we really seek the support of senators so that we move together. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Senator for Taita Taveta, Senator Mwaruma.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for struggling to remember my name, Senator Mwaruma. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to weigh in and comment on this report by the COVID-19 committee. They have done an extremely good job in coming up with this report. They have burnt their midnight oil. They have invited experts, and I would like really to commend them for their work. I know the thrust of the fourth and fifth reports is really economic and finance, but I would like to really talk briefly about some issues that have to do with health issues, even if they were addressed in the previous reports, because then if they're not checked, then they'll go a long way into becoming an impediment in fighting this coronavirus. Number one, Madam Speaker, as we speak, there was a suggestion that we have ICU facilities in our hospitals. As we speak, Madam Speaker, some of the hospitals, some of the counties do not have ICU facilities. Yet at the same time, Madam Speaker, there are counties that have worked very hard and established ICU facilities in less than 21 days. So what I would seek to maybe recommend to the Mother Minister of Health, they should recommend that all, and maybe push, that all counties to have ICU facilities, because then there are ICU facilities are main component in fight against the coronavirus. Again, there was a suggestion at the counties, in social media and in the mainstream media, that we need to have the community health volunteers recognized and given some small stipend because of the kind of work that they do in ensuring the fight against coronavirus. These people do a lot, and most counties are not recognizing them, yet they are really part of the frontline personnel and human resource which is fighting corona. One of the things that I mentioned, Madam Speaker, in the morning is that national government through Public Service Commission and county public service boards have undertaken to employ more human resource to the counties, and there is an impediment to achieving this goal because the people who are shortlisted to go to counties to do the interviews sometimes might not be able to reach the counties because of the cessation of movement. And I'm wondering what measures or recommendations the committee can put in place to make sure that those people who had moved to towns, for example, Nairobi, Mombasa, which are currently under lockdown, they can be allowed to go to the counties to do the interviews so that they may get chances to work, but at the same time to ensure that the counties that do not have human resource then get these people to attend interviews and get employment. Madam Speaker, having said that, then I would like also to talk about the economy and finance thematic area, which is the thrust of this fourth and fifth report. The truth of the matter is that people on the ground are suffering because of loss of gainful employment. As it has been observed in the report, most people who are working in the tourism industry have lost their jobs. Those who are working in the transport industry have lost their jobs. They don't have food. As I speak, Madam Speaker, there are so many messages in my phone, so many phone calls of people who are asking for food. They don't have even the basic commodity, which is food. They are sleeping hungry. They are lucky if they can only get a cup of porridge for the family. What I think should happen is that we need to implore the national government, we need to implore the county governments to make accessible food to these people. These are basic commodity. We've locked them down to control the spread of corona. Now, we are saying if they don't die out of corona, they will die because of hunger, Madam Speaker. And in terms of the many initiatives that have been started by the national government and the county government to raise funds through public-private initiatives, those are there and they are commendable, but they are not enough. Madam Speaker, we had budgets in the county governments. My recommendation would be budgets again. Pass budgets that would appropriate some money to ensure that the very poor people and the vulnerable people can be able to get something, a small subsidy or a small stipend to cater for food. There was a suggestion in the morning that county assemblies are not meeting because of the social distancing issue. But as Senate, we are meeting. The National Assembly is meeting. Why can't they be innovative enough? Why can't the assemblies be innovative enough, come up with ways and means of meeting so that they can mitigate the effects of lockdown and the effects of loss of jobs for their people? Because the truth is that people are suffering. There is loss of income also because in the agricultural sector, like where I come from, horticultural products are not being exported to foreign countries. So there is an economic slump in this area. The people who are growing nuts like macadamia, the prices have plummeted from around 200 per kg. Now they're going to between 40 and 50 per kg. So there is serious loss of income, and these people really need to be compensated in some way. The Ministry of Agriculture can come up with modalities of maybe ensuring minimum returns for these people, so that because they invested in farming, then they can be given minimum returns to make sure that they repay their loans and also they feed their families. And in the same breath, we would request, and I did the same in the morning and a statement in the early afternoon, and a statement that the government agencies that are tasked with giving loans and credit to farmers, then they need to slow down in the manner in which they go after the creditors. For example, we gave an example of Kenya Industrial Estates, which gives loans and credit to establishments that put agricultural products in the value chain. They need to slow down in the manner in which they demand for the loan repayments. We also have agricultural finance corporations. If farmers have gotten a produce and the produce does not access the markets, one, because of there are no flights, there are no flights to abroad, to the markets abroad, then definitely these people or the farmers will not get income to repay the loans. There needs then, and it's recommended in the report, that there needs to have to be a moratorium in the way or in the manner in which these loans are repaid and in the manner in which these loans are defrayed. There is also, in the economic sense, drop in revenue. It's very clear in the report that revenue collection has gone down, ostensibly because many people have lost their jobs, and definitely pay as you earn or income tax would go down. We also have many products not reaching the markets, and these same people pay value-added tax, and then definitely we are having a slump in the revenue that we are collecting. I think we need also, as a committee or as Senate, to think of ways and means of adapting and adopting to the new normal. Some people have started talking the truth. I heard Dr. Mwangangi the other day saying that the new normal is that we must learn to live with COVID-19. the same way we learned how to live with HIV and AIDS. We need to look for ways and means of bringing back our economy back to on its footpath. Our new normal would be wash your hands. Our new normal would be we must put masks. Our new normal would be social distancing all through. And therefore, we must think of ways and means of bringing this economy back to its footing, because we can't afford the loss of revenue that we are experiencing right now, loss of payee, loss of income tax, loss of VAT, loss of import duty, and so on. And I was telling somebody one time that in future, when our children would be looking at us, they would be saying, that is if there is no vaccine or we don't curb this corona. They would be wondering how we were living without masks. They would be wondering how we were staying close together and dancing in disco halls and in clubs. They would be wondering how we were squeezing ourselves in matatus. So we must adapt to the new norms so that we can bring our economy to its foot again. Tanzania is managing. Tanzania is managing, though we're told that they could be not very straight. They could be not very straight in the statistics, but they did not close the mosques. They did not close the churches. They did not close their businesses. It is business as usual. We have more cases. They have fewer cases. Maybe in a balance of probability, we need to look at what they are doing against what we are doing, so that we can bring our economy back to its footing. The report also is suggesting that we need to cushion the SMEs. I mentioned before that the stimulus program for SMEs proposed by the President of Kenya, that is under SMEs, Stawisha SMEs, this is the right time to bring the 4.5 billion, inject it to the economy, so that the people who have lost income, people who have lost or whose businesses went down, they can bring their businesses up again through such credit, which should be of low interest rate. We should not have high interest rate loans. So through the SMEs, maybe through KIE, through AFC, we can finance our businesses, we can finance our agricultural activities through loans that can go up to maybe 5%, as well as 5%, 4%, so that we bring our economy back to its pedestal again. And also we need to look at how our counties are behaving. In Nairobi here, we have still this SMEs like the kinyozis, the saloons are still on. How then can we be able to do the same in our counties, so that we have the very, very poor people, the very, very small young man, the very, very small lady who survives in maybe plaiting hair 3 to 4 heads per day so that they can eat, can be brought back to business. The people who, the barbers who work in barber shops can be brought back to business while observing the health issues. Maybe the last thing I would like to say is that, not really last, but there is the cross-border business. There are 2 COVID cases in Taita Taveta County, and these are at the border point of Holili, Taveta. They are people or the truck drivers who have COVID and they're actually Kenyans, but now they're at the Taveta border hospital. We need to really seal the panya routes. Let me call them the panya routes, the routes that they're using to come to Kenya and to go to Tanzania. If we don't do so, then again, we'll be leaving open the paths to having this disease cross either from Kenya to Tanzania or from Tanzania to Kenya. We really need to do a lot of stuff there. Lastly is to researchers. Previously, when we were fighting HIV and AIDS, people thought that this is a physical science issue, natural science issue. But later on, in fight against HIV, we discovered that the people who did a lot of work and commendable work were the social scientists. They are the ones who cracked this HIV and AIDS. For example, we were asking questions like, how is HIV spread? And some people are saying a mosquito can spread HIV. So if you're in a room, for example, and you're bitten by a mosquito and you have HIV, another person is bitten by a mosquito and they have HIV, then they could get. But social scientists said in a research, how come a mother who is HIV positive can live for 20 years in the same house with a daughter who is HIV positive, and they don't, that son or daughter does not get HIV? That was from research from a social scientist. So maybe we need to give a multifaceted approach to research in this coronavirus. And I know by and by we will crack it. We will crack it. Those would be my contributions. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Senator Faria.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. And I wish to commend the committee, the ad hoc committee, for job well done, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, there's an issue that Senator Maura canvassed around SMEs, and the SMEs going down. According to research done, it's been said that 70 to 80% of the employment in this country is through SME. Madam Speaker, and as a country, we have very high level of unemployment. And Madam Speaker, if we don't take care of this sector, Madam Speaker, then there will be a lot of unemployment, and I think as it's been predicted, our GDP is going down. So a lot of other issues that will be affecting, Madam Speaker, we'll have a lot of social problems in this country if you are not careful. We don't think through that there will be life beyond COVID-19. Madam Speaker, in the global statistics, a very high percentage of about 45 to 60% of the SMEs do not see their 5th birthday. So they don't live beyond 5 years. And Madam Speaker, in a research done, it was discovered that Kenya alone, 400,000 SMEs die annually. Madam Speaker, this was the case even before COVID-19. Madam Speaker, can you imagine now what can happen with the problem being compounded by COVID-19? And unless we provide what we call stimulus package to the SMEs in this country, Madam Speaker, most of them will die, and that will be a very big disaster for this economy, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, there are countries like UK, US, they are already giving some stimulus packages to their SMEs. And I think, giving stimulus packages sometimes is not only about actually leaving this one to see another day, but it's also creating circulation of money, because when there is an economic hardships, Madam Speaker, even the money that is circulating within the community goes down, Madam Speaker, and then the SME dies. That SME was employing like 10 people. Those 10 people who used to go to a shop or dies. Those who used to, the factories whose products used to be sold by those shops also closed down. So it has a lot of ripple effect if it is not carefully managed, Madam Speaker. And Madam Speaker, like the previous speakers have said, if you are not careful and we leave this, we don't stop this capitalism mentality, where we say market forces determine everything. Because this is an extraordinary time, Madam Speaker, we might just plunge our economy to a total collapse, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the other issue I wanted to comment about is distribution of cash instead of food to the most vulnerable during this time when there is a lot of hardship, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, in terms of if you give people food, you take away their choices, Madam Speaker. And let's say you give maize to somebody, different parts of this country, being given maize in certain proportion will be good, and others, They, like where I come from, if you give them maize, for example, as a food, support, that maize will be given to the goats and the cows. It's not that the people are not hungry. It's because that is not part of what their diet. So, Madam Speaker, and because of several other reasons in terms of the impact on the economy, in terms of ability for savings, Madam Speaker, to invest in another time when the opportunity comes, Madam Speaker, cash is always much more appropriate. It's much more dignified. It's much more cheaper in terms of, if you send money through M-Pesa to several people, that is much, much more cheaper than transporting the same value of money to that person who is going to receive. And Madam Speaker, even during this corona time, Madam Speaker, where even when people crowd together, it causes a problem, Madam Speaker. Cash is not an appropriate choice. And therefore, Madam Speaker, instead of people wasting a lot of money on food distribution, their focus should be much more, if you can give even 50 bob to that person and leave them to that choice, you are better off than, spending a lot of money transporting food and other stuff to wherever they are. And therefore, the intervention that the government is thinking, it is my recommendation that they use cash, which is much more appropriate. Madam Speaker, as Senator Mwaruma has said that hunger will kill people. Hunger will not only kill the people, it makes them much more vulnerable because for the disease. Because if you are hungry, then your immunity goes down, and then if the disease finds you when you're at the lowest moment of your immunity level, the chances of you dying out of the COVID-19 impact is higher than somebody who has better balanced diet, Madam Speaker. And Madam Speaker, the other thing is that as Kenyans, we have to be much, much more responsible in ensuring that we curb the spread of COVID-19. We ensure that we follow government guidance in terms of, the curfew. The other day I saw people being picked in certain parts of Nairobi for gathering in a bar without even mask, and they were just drinking. And some of those people included people with high responsibility, Madam Speaker. Therefore, Madam Speaker, I think it is only fair that we become each other's keeper by ensuring that what we need to do is exactly what we do, but also be careful that we do not increase people's vulnerability because other people are taking advantage of them because of certain, government guidelines. Because, like, for example, people taking bribes for people to go to the next county. People, where there's a small concentration, like you see people living there. That is costly to the economy, Madam Speaker, and it perpetrates the fraud that we are trying to curb at a different level. Madam Speaker, with those few remarks, I wish to thank you for giving me opportunity.
This matter does not concern the counties? Oh, the mover. Abshiro. Okay, fine. Senator Abshiro, can I give you an opportunity to reply?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I beg to reply and thank all the colleagues that have contributed to this all-important report. I hear their cries and I relate to them and would like to associate myself with every single contribution that has been made on this floor. And because this pandemic is not just a health issue, Madam Speaker, you will realize that we're going from health to socio-economic, to food, to economy, to human rights, to justice, to corruption. And therefore, this just goes to show just how all-encompassing this pandemic is, and that it goes beyond just a health issue to really an issue of a very multifaceted issue, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I would like to thank Senator Mogeni, who is also part of the committee, for his contributions and his buttressing of the fact that the socio-economic stimulus or the socio-economic measures are not an end in themselves, but are meant then to cushion the population and to ensure that the rights of the people to food, to education, and to other social order is also observed. Madam Speaker, I'd also like to thank Senator Mwaruma for the contributions he has made. Madam Speaker, he has spoken to a lot of the health issues actually in the thematic area one that we had with regards to, you know, the health sector as well. Madam Speaker, I'm just trying to locate my notes because I was writing profusely as he was speaking. Madam Speaker, Senator Mwaruma has taken the time to really enumerate some of the issues that we need to look at in terms of the economy and the finance, but also in terms of the people suffering. And Madam Speaker, I'd like to reassure Senator Mwaruma that in the next cluster or the next thematic area for social justice, public order and human rights, the rights to food, the rights to all sorts of support that you have mentioned have already been captured, and what hasn't been captured, I have captured to ensure that what you've proposed is also looked at. He has talked about the economies, the economic sector such as tourism, which I know the county of Taita Taveta is also a big tourist destination, and the fact that the senators who sit here are actually being asked for food. And this is the reality on the ground, Madam Speaker. So we're saying that this pandemic is really one where we have to look at not just the health perspective, but also the socio-economic perspective, the food perspective as well. And in fact, we even have a substantive thematic area, Senator Mwaruma, on actually access to food, water, sanitation, and all manner of things, and stakeholders being met on that area as well. With regards to county assemblies and meetings, the senator is right. I think the county assemblies need to look at innovative ways in which they continue to serve, even as they look at after their health and after their well-being, and observing all the guidelines provided by our country and the WHO as well. Madam Speaker, he has also spoken to the agriculture sector, and this is one that has been hit very hard. We as a committee have already met with the agricultural sector. We've met the minister. He has enumerated to us and listed the stimulus and other support package that they've done. We noted that the crop farming is quite well taken care of, but the livestock area was quite wanting, and we have given him that feedback that support to agriculture should also include the livestock sector, because parts of northern Kenya, parts of the southern plains of the Maasai are all pastoralist areas, and to define agriculture as just crop farming is also to understate the food security for this country, but also the livelihoods of a big chunk of the Kenyan population, including even not really paying much attention to fishing communities in the package for agriculture. These are some of the things that the committee has actually given written memoranda back to the minister to ensure that agriculture is defined much more broadly, to ensure the farming, the pastoralist communities and the fishing communities are also looked at. But that is not to say that the major exporter of our horticulture has been hit the hardest. Of course, has been hit the hardest, and that has had a major effect on our GDP, on our inflows of foreign exchange, and therefore we have looked at that, and pretty much along the suggestions given by Senator Mwaruma and other senators, we have looked at providing support to the farmers, both the pastoralists, the fisher folk, and the crop farmers. Madam Speaker, coming to the economy, I think he has also alluded to that, and we take note of it, and we appreciate the input. But as I was listening to him, I couldn't help but wonder if this is not the time for Kenya to revive its manufacturing sector and to ensure that Kenya actually goes back not just to its former glory of making from blankets to sweaters and other things, to actually revive, as we were told this morning, even the PPEs being made in this country are of higher quality of some of the PPEs that we're importing, and this is a wake-up call for us as our value chains and as our exports and imports collapse, for us to look inward and actually then implement His Excellency's one of the agenda items of manufacturing. This would be a good opportunity. It's always a silver lining to these things. Madam Speaker, the Senator spoke about Tanzania doing it well. I'm not sure that's a very good example, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, yes, Tanzania is going on with business as usual and not testing, but any Tanzanian being tested here is actually positive, to the point where they're now saying that vipimo vya Kenya si mzuri, like they are now starting to question our testing, and that is not, and I stand by the testing in Kenya, and therefore I think what we need to do is that every country is unique, and that every country has its needs and its context, and what Kenya is doing, I think, is right. It's just that we need to do more of it, especially in terms of cushioning the most vulnerable in society as we lock things down. I know lockdowns have affected a lot of people, and it affects more the poor, it affects more the people in the informal settlements, and it affects more people perhaps in certain parts of this country where, movement has been curtailed, but the requisite support has not been given. So I think what we need to do is that we'll need to look, and then he spoke about our borders. Given that the weakest link is our borders, especially the one with Tanzania, we are for all East African community, but I think when it comes to the lives of our citizens, we support the closure of the Kenya-Tanzania border and even the Kenya-Somalia border, even though we who come from northern Kenya, of course, by ethnicity or by culture, we are more sympathetic. But that said, the people across the border may be our brothers, but the pandemic is not. Madam Speaker, the COVID is not. Madam Speaker, going to Senator Farhia's contributions, which I would like to thank her very much. Senator Farhia is so competent in the financial sector, and her contributions are spot on with regards to, the percentage of our economy that's driven by SMEs and MSMEs. Madam Speaker, in fact, she said 70%, but because we've just done we're recently working on, it's actually 89%, and therefore she's spot on in saying that the support to SMEs is key to the survival of our economy, because it actually has a ripple effect of households. 89% of households actually being supported by SMEs. Madam Speaker, she also spoke about how SMEs, die in the first 5 years, and that is very true. Statistics show it, that SMEs, if not well supported, do have, death rate, so to speak, for lack of better word, of about 5 years. And so the pandemic has made it even worse, given that they have nowhere to get loans. Their loans are being recalled, and that their value chains or their import chains for those that import have been cut. The productivity has gone to near zero, and therefore the suggestion that for stimulus package is so much welcome, and actually forms part of both the pandemic bill and the report on thematic area 4, which is the economic sector, the sector support and citizen support. Madam Speaker, another sector that as I was listening to her, I remembered was also the energy sector. Madam Speaker, because we are now very desperate, and our revenues in terms of revenue collection, as I presented earlier, has plummeted, we are now starting to put back levies and taxes on areas of the economy that would otherwise shouldn't be taxed. For instance, Madam Speaker, I know independent power producers, the producers of mini grids, the producers of small power, small solar, for a long time and for good reason had been exempt from taxation. But in the latest appropriation bill, or in the latest finance bill, those taxes have been put back. while I know that we need all the revenue we can get at this point, so that then as a country, we're not just looking at empty coffers with so much need, to tax areas like that is actually to take ourselves back. The energy mix in this country for a long time has been pretty much renewable. And this is something Kenya has been lauded for, and this is something we as Kenyans have been proud of, because the energy footprint, the fuel energy, and other energy sources which have the worst kind of climate effect had actually been one where Kenya had done very well to go renewables. A, because we have a lot of renewable energy. I know Senator Farhia has mentioned about Wajir having a lot of sun. Isiolo has a lot of sun. Northern Kenya and every part of this country actually has more sun than perhaps even all seasons combined in certain parts of the northern hemisphere. Madam Speaker, for us to start then taxing these energy sources would be a real big mistake, given that then we will now go back to right now it looks like the fuel oils are coming down, and therefore it's something that we need to really guard against going back and creating an undesired consequence of going back to the more polluting energy resources. Madam Speaker, Senator also spoke about the ripple effect and the chain of effect of one SME dying, where then tens or hundreds of households will be affected, because just one SME supports so many households is something that we are very alive to, and as a committee have taken into consideration. And in fact, one of the things around cash transfers is something that we as a committee have really supported and are applauding, and would like the country to make sure that even as we respond to the different calamities, be they floods, be they droughts, or even this pandemic, cash transfers are a much better option than food distributions, where 60%, and I would know this because I worked for the Red Cross for a long time, and we know that close to between 46 and 67% of the food distribution actually goes to the logistical and all the other, from transportation to the people that are going to man the food, and the people that are going to assess and distribute and make sure that the crowd is controlled. So by the time you're done with all these things, most of the money doesn't go to the vulnerable person or the beneficiary. It actually goes to the logistics and other people who are perhaps not even as vulnerable, from the guy whose trucks we will hire to the people that, the security agents that will manage the crowds and what have you. So we take that input very seriously, Senator Farhia, and we thank you, because cash transfers are any day better than food distribution, but there comes at times perhaps due to lockdown, or perhaps due to the fact that maybe farmers may not even be able to farm, those might also become an issue. But for now, I think cash transfer is the way to go, and we look forward to a situation where we are efficient with resources, as we and people have dignity and have decision, they can decide on what to use the money on, because sometimes it's not true that everybody, as she says, needs the staples that we get. And I remember one time during a very bad drought, Madam Speaker, government was to provide meat, I think for northern Kenya. For some reason it was meat, I don't know if it's Eid, and then trucks just arrived there with meat. People in northern Kenya who are Muslims, there's a way in which every animal is slaughtered. And so when the meat arrived, people looked at the meat and ran for their dear lives. They said, it's not edible. So that was such a waste. Of course, the meat was quickly taken somewhere else, and cash transfers then recommended, or live goats provided. But this is just how sometimes we can get it wrong if we decide to distribute foods without really having, the contextual framework. Madam Speaker, I think with regards to the other issues, I would like to thank everybody in this House and your office for the support that the COVID committee has continued to enjoy. And I'd also like to give special thanks to the Secretariat of the COVID committee, because I know our secretariats are usually very good, but for some reason I think your office was kind enough to give us the very best. We've had, record time in drafting bills. We've had record time in writing reports. This is our 6th report, and as you have seen, we are producing more reports than even the House can actually debate them. And so I'd like to say a special thank you to your office for providing, and to the clerk's office for giving us an amazing support system from our clerks, who have done a fantastic job, and the legal team led by Dr. Okello and his team, who have done an amazing job with regards to processing the sheer volume of inputs we've received from the citizens of this country. And as Senator Maruma has said, this is a house where now is becoming the face of Kenya, and people are coming to us with all manner of things. Madam Speaker, you'll be pleased to note that for just the pandemic bill alone, we received 163 submissions from so many people, and we're meeting each of these people, and therefore we would like to thank Kenyans as well for the interest they've shown in contributing to the welfare of our country during this time, not just financially, but also for their input into the legislative and policy framework. Lawyers have sat down, and before you would think that these private sector types would be driven by profit, but they've written big memos that has taken them many, many hours to give it to us, so that then Kenya would be better for it, that our laws are stronger and more robust for it. And so I'd like to thank all the stakeholders that have contributed to the COVID committee for their invaluable inputs. There's those that we haven't been able to meet. There are those we've been able to meet. But all of you have provided us invaluable support to the country, and you should really pat yourselves on the back for public service, even though some of you are in the private sector. Madam Speaker, by the time this report was being done, we had, I think, about 49 sittings. But as of today, when the 6th report was being written, we had 53. That is to say, Madam Speaker, that we as a Senate have burned the midnight oil, but this is not possible without the support and the encouragement of Kenyans, of your office, of the clerk's office, and the amazing support system. But also importantly, the support the senators have shown us in contributing to the different reports, as well as to the bill. Madam Speaker, with those few remarks, I reply and thank everybody for their role in the fight against the pandemic, especially our frontliners, the health workers, but also more important, the support staff that sometimes get forgotten, even as we talk about our health workers who are doing a fantastic job, but also the support staff who make sure that the health workers have somewhere clean to work from, and they themselves have got a good environment in which to work. Is our situation perfect? Maybe not, but I think this country is on the right path. It's doing its best, and I'm proud to say that we as a House will definitely be supportive of all the efforts from all arms of government, but without forgetting our oversight, because this is what this House does: oversight and ensure that the people are represented well. And those are things we will not negotiate, and we will definitely make sure that people are represented, counties are oversighted, but also counties are protected, and that Kenyans will be proud of this House, especially during this time. I thank you, Madam Speaker, and I reply.
Senators, this matter does not concern counties, therefore I will put the question. I now put the question that the Senate adopts the 4th and 5th progress reports on the ad hoc committee on COVID-19 situation in Kenya, laid on the table of the Senate on Tuesday, 5th May 2020, and Tuesday, 12th May 2020, respectively. As many as are of the opinion say aye. And those of the contrary opinion say nay. The ayes have it.
Order number.
Next order. Next order.
Order number 15, the National Drought Management Authority Amendment Bill National Assembly Bills number 26 of 2019, second reading.
Adjourned. I think that's adjourned. We defer that one.
Order number
Next order.
16, the Wildlife Conservation and Management Amendment Bill, Senate Bills number 24 of 2019, second reading.
That is deferred. Next order.
Order number 17, the Law of Succession Amendment Bill, Senate Bills number 1 of 2020, second reading.
I think that's it. No, she's talking too much. Second reading. Senator Abshiro, are you ready?
Madam Speaker, I could start, but I think I'd be better prepared if I moved it next week.
Okay, that's deferred.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Honorable Senators, having concluded the business of the day, it is now time to adjourn the House. The Senate therefore stands adjourned until Tuesday, 26 May 2020 at 10 a.m.